You need to tell us right now what exactly happened. This is your chance to set it straight. Because right now it looks like capital murder. Right now it looks like you're a cold-blooded killer. Now, are you a cold-blooded killer?
No, I'm not.
Or were you a frustrated mother who just took it out on her? For whatever reason.
No.
It's gotta be one or the other.
Some cases begin with a crime scene. Others begin with an arrest. This one begins with a child who fell, and a mother the system decided to blame. February 2007. South Texas. A 2-year-old girl is found unresponsive. Paramedics rush her to the hospital, and within hours, she is gone. Her mother, Melissa Lucio, is not a criminal. She is poor. She is exhausted. She is a survivor of lifelong abuse. And she is questioned for hours while grieving the worst loss imaginable. By the end of that interrogation, the state said she confessed, not because she harmed her child, but because she was broken, frightened, and trying to make the questioning stop. What came next would shock the nation. No physical evidence linking her to a crime. No eyewitness. Conflicting medical opinions. And yet, Melissa Lucio was sentenced to die. Today, she sits on death row. Her execution was stopped just days before it was scheduled to happen. Lawmakers are questioning the evidence. Experts are challenging the science. And the truth remains trapped between doubt and a death sentence. Is Melissa Lucio guilty? Or is she another mother the system was too quick to condemn? Before we go any further, if you believe wrongful convictions deserve the light of day, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this only change when people refuse to look away. Melissa Lucio was not born into an easy life. Long before the courts, the headlines, and death row, she was just a woman trying to survive in a world that had never been kind to her. She grew up surrounded by instability. Violence was not something she read about in the news. It was something she lived with. As a young girl, Melissa experienced abuse that left invisible scars, the kind that don't fade with time. Those experiences shaped her into someone quiet, guarded, and deeply afraid of authority. She learned early that speaking up could make things worse, not better. By the time Melissa became a mother, she had already endured more than many people experience in a lifetime. She had children young, and then more children. Eventually, she became the mother of 12. 12 lives depending on her. 12 mouths to feed. 12 hearts to protect. Her life revolved around survival. There was no luxury, no safety net, no room for mistakes. Every day was about getting through the next hour. Food, shelter, keeping her children together, keeping them safe in a world that constantly threatened to pull them apart. Melissa was not perfect. She struggled with poverty. She struggled with unstable relationships. She struggled with trauma that had never healed. But she loved her children fiercely. Anyone who knew her knew that being a mother was the center of her identity, especially when it came to her youngest daughter, Mariah. Mariah was 2 years old, small, fragile, still learning how to run without falling, still learning how to speak in full sentences. The kind of child who clings to her mother's leg when she's scared, who falls asleep in the back seat of the car after a long day. On February 17th, 2007, Mariah fell down the stairs. It wasn't the first fall she'd ever had. Toddlers fall. They stumble. They get bruises. Melissa had raised many children before. She knew what scraped knees looked like. She knew what childhood accidents looked like. But this time was different. Mariah didn't bounce back. Her breathing changed. Her energy faded. Her body went limp. Melissa panicked. She didn't wait days. She didn't hide. She didn't run. She called for help. Paramedics arrived. They tried to save Mariah, but it was too late. Melissa watched as her daughter was pronounced dead. In that moment, her world collapsed. A mother's worst nightmare had come true, not because of malice, not because of cruelty, but because of a moment she could never take back. Grief consumed everything. Shock, confusion, guilt, fear. Melissa did what grieving parents often do. She blamed herself. She replayed every second in her mind. What if she had reacted faster? What if she had noticed something sooner? What if she had carried her instead of letting her walk? Those thoughts tore her apart. And then something else happened. The system arrived. Police officers entered her home. Investigators looked around. Questions were asked. Then more questions. Then the tone changed. What had been a tragedy slowly began to feel like an accusation. Medical professionals noted bruises on Mariah's body, bruises that Melissa knew had explanations. Mariah had fallen before. She played with her siblings. She was an active toddler. But now those marks were no longer seen as accidents. They were seen as evidence.
There were bruises from head to toe. There were bruises on the face, in the hair, on the chest. There were even abrasions or scrapes on the neck. On internal examination, I was really wanting to know, okay, what is the injury that killed her on this day? There was blood that had accumulated in the cranial vault where the brain sits. I do believe that was probably due to a punch or a kick or something, some type of injury, a significant injury. I did think this was a homicide, and once I looked at the head and saw that there were contusions on both sides and in the back, I did think this was a homicide.
And Melissa didn't know how to fight back. She didn't know how to explain herself in the right words. She didn't know how to advocate for herself in a room filled with authority figures. Her trauma had taught her one thing above all else: comply, stay quiet, don't make things worse. As her daughter lay gone, the weight of suspicion settled over her like a storm cloud. Melissa wasn't treated like a grieving mother. She was treated like a suspect. She was taken in for questioning, still in shock, still grieving, still blaming herself. She had no idea that the moment she stepped into that interrogation room, her life was about to split into two parts. The life she had before that night, and the life that would follow, one shaped not by truth, but by how grief, fear, and misunderstanding would be interpreted by a system that had already begun to make up its mind. Melissa Lucio did not know it then, but the system was already closing in, and once it did, it would not let go. Melissa Lucio did not walk into that police station as a suspect. She walked in as a grieving mother. Her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah, was gone. Melissa was exhausted, shaken, and barely holding herself together. She had spent the night answering questions, reliving the worst moment of her life again and again. She had no lawyer, no sleep, no time to understand what was happening. And then the interrogation began.
Right when I first saw you in there, I knew something was wrong. You know something is wrong.
No, sir, I don't.
You know something is wrong.
No, sir, I don't.
If I bring you all those pictures, if I beat you half to death, like that little child was beat, I bet you'd die too.
Sir, I did not beat my daughter, sir.
No?
I'm not that cruel to my children.
What are those bruises on your little child?
Thing is that I got a mom. You can clearly see here. Doesn't know who did that. Yeah, it wasn't me. I didn't cause her death.
For more than 5 hours, detectives questioned Melissa in a small room with bare walls and harsh lighting. They didn't ask her what happened in a neutral way. They told her what they believed happened. Over and over, they told her Mariah didn't fall. They told her accidents don't look like this. They told her she was lying. Melissa tried to explain. She said her daughter had fallen down the stairs days earlier. She said Mariah bruised easily. She said she didn't hurt her child. But every explanation was met with disbelief. The detectives changed tactics. They told Melissa she was going to prison. They told her she would never see her other children again. They told her that the only way to help herself was to take responsibility. Melissa had grown up in poverty. She had survived years of abuse. She had learned one thing early in life. When authority demands compliance, you comply. As the hours passed, her answers became shorter. Her voice grew quieter. She stopped correcting the detectives. She started agreeing, not because she was guilty, but because she was broken down. Then came the words that would haunt her for decades. When asked if she had hurt Mariah, Melissa responded softly, "I guess I did it. Not I did it. Not, I killed my daughter. I guess."
Lay her down and show me how you would spank her. But was it one time or was it several times?
Several times.
Show me how. But show me the same force you would use. Was your right or left hand?
Right hand.
Would you be standing up or sitting down?
Both.
How would you do it when you're sitting down? Show me how you would do it. But I mean the way you actually did it. Just get it over with.
I'll just spank her real hard on her back.
Well, do it real hard like you would do it. Like the way you would do it.
That's the way we do it. I mean, I wouldn't pound on her.
But well, do it.
You done.
Was it harder?
No.
Because I'm doing it hard.
Well, you're doing it on yourself. This is...
Those two words, spoken after hours of pressure, became the foundation of a capital murder case. The detectives treated it as a confession, but Melissa immediately tried to clarify. She said she never intended to hurt her child. She said she didn't remember harming her. She said she was confused. Those parts were ignored. There was no recording of her being told she was free to leave. There was no lawyer present. There was no pause to assess her mental state. Instead, the interrogation ended, and the narrative was set. From that moment on, Melissa Lucio was no longer a grieving mother in the eyes of the state. She was a murderer. The investigation did not search for other explanations. It did not explore medical causes. It did not fully examine Mariah's medical history. The focus narrowed, sharply and permanently, on Melissa. Every bruise on Mariah's body was labeled abuse. Every injury was framed as intentional. Every unanswered question was blamed on the woman sitting in that interrogation room. What was not explained to the jury, years later, was how trauma affects memory, how exhaustion affects judgment, how people under extreme pressure can say things they don't mean just to make the pain stop. The system didn't ask whether Melissa's words were reliable. It accepted them and moved on. And just like that, the case was no longer about finding the truth. It was about securing a conviction. After the interrogation, prosecutors described Melissa Lucio's statements as a confession. In court, those statements became central to the case. But outside the courtroom, experts have raised questions about how they were obtained and how much weight they should carry. Researchers who study interrogations have long documented that confessions are not always reliable, particularly when questioning occurs under conditions of extreme stress, grief, or exhaustion. Melissa Lucio was questioned shortly after her child's death. She had no attorney present. She was isolated and questioned for several hours. According to psychologists who later reviewed the interrogation, these circumstances can affect memory, judgment, and decision-making, especially for individuals who are emotionally overwhelmed. Experts have pointed out that Melissa's statements did not resemble a detailed, spontaneous admission. Instead, many responses appeared brief, uncertain, or aligned with suggestions introduced during questioning. At multiple points, she expressed confusion or hesitation.
She's being interrogated without having them provide her any water. I don't know if they had a bathroom break, and she didn't have anything to eat the whole day. Those are circumstances that are conducive to getting people to confess.
Melissa, we had talked about it.
Here's a woman who has acquiesced to the most horrific stuff by men in her life since the age of 7 and has shown very little assertion against adult males in her life. And now is grieving for the death of her daughter and is, in a sense, caving in to the whole process of the interrogation.
Legal analysts describe this type of exchange as compliance-based responding, where a person may agree with statements in order to end questioning rather than to provide an accurate account. Another issue raised by experts is suggestibility. When investigators repeatedly present a theory, a vulnerable person may begin to question their own memory, particularly when denial is met with continued pressure. As a result, agreement does not always indicate intent or recollection. These concerns become more significant when considered alongside the physical evidence. In Melissa Lucio's case, there was no eyewitness testimony linking her to an act of violence. There was no forensic evidence definitively establishing intentional harm. Medical opinions were divided. Some professionals believed the injuries suggested abuse. Others later stated the findings were consistent with an accidental fall or with injuries that could be explained by medical conditions or prior trauma. This lack of consensus has remained a central point of debate. Legal standards generally require confessions to be supported by independent evidence. Critics of the case argue that this support was limited and that the confession carried disproportionate influence. Safeguards commonly recommended in high-risk interrogations, such as access to counsel, mental health assessment, and delayed questioning, were not fully present. For some experts, this raises concerns about reliability, not because guilt or innocence has been conclusively determined, but because the process itself has been questioned. And once a confession is introduced at trial, it often shapes how all other evidence is viewed. This would become a defining factor as the case moved forward. When Melissa Lucio's case went to trial, the focus narrowed. The jury was not asked to decide what might have happened in the hours before her child's death. They were asked to decide whether the prosecution had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. At the center of that case was the interrogation. Prosecutors argued that Melissa's statements showed responsibility. They presented the confession as an admission, supported, in their view, by medical testimony suggesting abuse. The defense challenged that interpretation. They argued that the statements were unreliable, made under extreme emotional distress, and not supported by physical evidence. They also pointed to conflicting medical opinions and emphasized the lack of eyewitness testimony. But trials move quickly, and juries must make decisions based on what they are shown, not what may exist outside the courtroom. During the trial, jurors heard from medical experts who testified that the injuries could not have been accidental. They also heard about the interrogation and the statements Melissa made. What the jury did not hear, or heard only in limited form, would later become part of the controversy surrounding the case. Some medical experts who later reviewed the evidence were not called to testify. Additional explanations for the injuries were not fully explored, and broader research on false confessions was not a central part of the trial. After deliberating for several hours, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Melissa Lucio was convicted of capital murder. The case then moved into the penalty phase, where the question was no longer guilt, but punishment. The prosecution argued that the crime was intentional and warranted the harshest sentence under Texas law. The defense presented evidence of Melissa's background, including her history of abuse, poverty, and trauma. They argued that these factors mattered, not as excuses, but as context. In the end, the jury sentenced Melissa Lucio to death. With that decision, the case entered a different phase of the justice system. Appeals would follow. New evidence would be reviewed. Experts would re-examine the record, But for Melissa Lucio, the immediate reality was simple and devastating. She was transferred to death row. There, time moves differently. Years pass between court filings. Decisions arrive slowly, and uncertainty becomes a permanent condition. As the legal process continued, questions raised by experts, lawmakers, and advocates did not disappear. Instead, they grew louder. And eventually, those questions would bring the case back into the national spotlight, just as the clock was running out. For years, Melissa Lucio remained on death row. Her case moved quietly through the appeals process. Filings submitted, arguments reviewed, decisions delayed. Like many death penalty cases, progress was slow and largely unseen. But outside the courtroom, attention to the case began to grow. Independent medical experts re-examined the evidence. Legal scholars raised concerns about the interrogation and trial. Advocacy groups questioned whether all relevant information had been fully considered. As the execution date approached in 2022, public scrutiny intensified. Lawmakers in Texas, from both parties, took the unusual step of urging the courts to pause the execution, citing unresolved questions and the need for further review. At the same time, the case drew national attention from criminal justice advocates, including public figures who had previously supported wrongful conviction reviews. Among them was Kim Kardashian, who publicly called for a reevaluation of the case. Her involvement did not alter the legal standard, but it amplified awareness, bringing renewed attention to concerns already raised by experts and lawmakers. Days before the scheduled execution, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted a stay. For the first time in years, the case paused.
Hello?
Melissa,
Yes.
hey, this is Jeff Leach.
Yes, sir.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Have you heard the news?
No. What happened?
The Court of Criminal Appeals issued a stay of your execution for Wednesday.
Are you serious? Oh my God! That is wonderful. What does that mean?
Well, it means you're going to wake up on Thursday morning.
Oh my goodness!
And
Oh, thank you, God.
the order was very strong, and it appears that you're going to get a new trial at the very least.
Oh my goodness. That is so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Not because it was resolved, but because it could not be ignored. Since then, the legal process has continued. Additional reviews have been ordered. New testimony has been considered. Experts remain divided. Melissa Lucio remains on death row. Her conviction has not been overturned. Her sentence has not been vacated. And the courts have not issued a final resolution. What remains is a case defined by unanswered questions. Supporters argue the evidence does not justify a death sentence. Prosecutors maintain the conviction was lawful. Courts continue to weigh those arguments within the limits of the law. This case is not over. It exists in the space between certainty and doubt, where legal decisions carry irreversible consequences. And until a final ruling is made, the question remains: has justice been fully served?